woo and indeed who. This has been an absolute... Oh, off the 8:30. Now, this is one of the leading runners. This is the light blue Hyundai i30N. Was 4th position. It spun off in the... Oh, it's in the 50s as well. 53rd. Turn 1. You missed there, Johnny. You go off a long, long way. There's just simply no grip at all offline now. We've seen a few people misjudge their braking and end up in the kitty litter.
Yeah, that's where Gabriele Tarquini ended up in a VLN earlier on this year as well, when they were testing that car ahead of this big race and ahead of the World TCR races here this weekend. I reckon the 12 car, the Manthey Racing machine, driven by Lars Kern, actually broadside at Schwalbenschwanz, so the exit out of there and onto the Dottinger Höhe, and thankfully the car didn't come back across the track to fully block the route of Kelvin van der Linde.
It's yeah, he's just a little bit further round, isn't he? Just coming on back onto the Dottinger Höhe. Lars Kern, the man who took the Porsche road car to a record early part of this year. That's since been broken again by Porsche.
Side by side for 3rd position, and Jelmer Berman gets a place just before Schwedenkreuz round the outside. He got the better run through Flugplatz, wow. And the yellow and blue Bilstein car takes 3rd position away from Maxime Martin.
Down into the foxhole with traffic ahead. Now, Maxime didn't seem to fight that too much, so is there a certain amount of fuel saving going on there as well? No flags at the side of the circuit. No reason for Maxime to slow down. He didn't fight that at all. He did not fight that at all.
Didn't look like it.
No, he didn't, and I reckon that if refuelling is going to happen, it could start happening at the end of this lap, and otherwise we've got one more lap to go. Whilst I said it was a 135 lap race, that's only for the race leaders, of course.
Yes.
That means it'll be a 134 lap race for the 3 cars that are all 1 lap behind the 2 Black Falcon Mercedes and the Aston Martin.
Christodoulu's gone through to start another lap, so that means Fred Macklin must have as well. 21.5 seconds between the Porsche leading and the Mercedes in 2nd place. Still very slippery out there, and Adam, who has survived impact with the barrier, is still chasing on. Meantime, the 235 BMW has a right front that is not within the normal bounds of toe-in. At that point, I'm not a suspension engineer, but even I know that's not right. It's at about 45 degrees to the direction of travel, and that is 10th in the Cup class.
Yeah, a class that's now led by car 256, by the way. So is that Tristan Vidas at the wheel of the 256 machine? Might be. And 244 had been leading for a long, long time, but a change of lead in Classe Cup 5.
Yeah, that was, he was just going through Brunchen and heading towards the ice curve post 165. There is movement in the Black Falcon pits. Now, for which of the Black Falcon cars? Or both?
Or all 3?
In any case, you move. If I say this is the lap that you're going to come into the pits, regardless of what I say, sorry, I didn't mean that in any way arrogantly, but the team is going to be moving when they see the TV camera coming in. They'll say, right, laps, make it look like we're coming in. Let Manthey know what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, reasonable. Christodoulu. So is this the big dummy then from Black Falcon? Are they trying to sucker the 912 into the pits and then basically send Adam to the end?
It's either that, or they're just going to do their pit stop. They're going to get their car to the end of the race the way they'd like to. They're going to run their race. They're going to be assured of 2nd place then, and in effect capitulate at this point. Certainly you can understand Olaf Manthey's face being a little bit smiley at this point, because that team does seem to have the upper hand at the moment, holding all the trump cards.
How long to go then? 25 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got a possible discrepancy of up to 20 seconds on this timer, because when they reset the when they restarted the race, there was a bit of resetting of timing going on, which I wasn't able to pick up.
Right. So 24 minutes, pretty much on the nose to go. what do you do if you're man-tied? Johnny Palmer, do you stay out and just run your own race? Don't be fazed by anything that goes on behind you?
They've got a 21-second lead, and that's going to take some whittling down by all their rivals now. So Fred McAvee's been pushing on, but I think they've always been thinking they would need to stop. Now that they've got this lead, are they too late in the stint to be reining things back and going into fuel-saving mode? Not quite sure whether Fred McAvee's been in that mode for a few laps anyway.
Joe Bradley rightly reminds us that the checkered flag goes out as time elapses. So, you know, where you are on the track, ideally you want to be coming out of Tiergarten with 5 seconds to go.
Well, that will happen if you make a pit stop. If you don't make the pit stop and try and do it without the stop, then you get to the checkered flag and it's not there because 24 hours hasn't elapsed for you, but at least you are completing that lap.
Yes, good point. And you've completed it first.
Yes.
Right. Oh, my goodness. My goodness. The worry is, of course, if there's 30 seconds to go and you've got a 20-second lead and you go across the line and you run out on the final lap and your competitor comes through with 5 seconds to go and they've got enough fuel and then they pass you on the last lap.
Yeah, that's what happened 2 years ago.
Yeah,
the two
exactly.
Mercedes side by side making contact, and Adam Christodoulou was in the right scenario on that occasion. And again, a squirm coming out of the Schwabenschwanz and towards Galgenkopf to go back onto the Dottinger Höhe, past the scene where he clattered the barrier several laps ago now, but so easy for that Mercedes to understeer wide, safely back onto the long straight.
What do they build AMG GTs out of that you can clatter the barrier as if you were on a video game and just ride round the outside on the grass and not nail the throttle? Didn't even knock a winglet off.
No, he didn't. Not even bent one of those dive plane type things. Past one of the Pixum Team Adrenaline BMWs from the Cup 5 class, a class, I'll remind you, that's still led by Tristan Vidas in the 256 car at 34th position overall. And over the line goes the Porsche, driven by Fred McAvee. That's 133 laps done, and no pit stop yet from Manthey. So 2 to go, including this one, Paul, for the race leader.
That's what the calculation is saying, but he will have to come in at the end of this one.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't come in at the end of this one, then it will be 3 to go, and then it's very difficult to see how he's going to have enough fuel to do all of that.
Right. So this picture may become a little clearer in another 10 minutes' time when Fred McAvee comes out of Tiergarten and he either heads for the pit lane or he confuses us once more and stays on the track.
Max Martin has dropped back 8 seconds from Berman.
Yeah.
So that is over as a fight in terms of pace. But what has David King and the team down there got up their sleeve? Are they trying something tricky? They're all on the top 4 are all on their 9th lap of this stint. And don't forget, they did a formation lap as well.
Yeah, exactly so. Yes, the pace has been a little bit low, but even so, but they were allowed to fill the car up to the maximum
Good point.
Fuel capacity rather than the maximum refueling amount. The Aston Martin has, yes, it has now been through, hasn't it? That's at the end of its lap, so it is going to go on to another one. So let me just recalculate the pit stop times.
And the Aston Martin's 8 seconds that it gave up on that lap to Jelmer Berman are the 8 seconds that it trails a step on the overall podium. Still leading SP3G and 4th position overall. I have a suspicion if at the start of the race we'd offered these guys that, they might have taken it.
Yeah,
but having been so close,
having been second at times, having been running consistently in 3rd as well, you tease a team with an overall podium and then they might lose out on it at the death. that feels like you really have lost a great opportunity. It's not done yet, though, because our Aston Martin, as you say, on a bit of a clever strategy here. 8 seconds is a lot to lose on one lap.
And it was... we know that car's got the pace. That's the interesting thing. Let's not forget, everybody, that traffic might play a part, but also just getting round the Nordschleife in these conditions is a challenge in itself, Johnny, and a challenge that, you know, the last thing that you want for many of these drivers is to think, right, okay, we're going to settle for what we... Oh, I put a wheel off.
Yeah.
And I'm in the barrier.
Or, you know, speak to Nick Tandy, everything's going fine, and then you you drive in the back of a BMW, and all of a sudden you're both doing 360-degree spins out of nowhere. Thankfully, the cars ended up pointing in the right direction, and I was amazed that Nick Tandy lost about 1.5 seconds in that spin.
The Manthey guys changed the nose of the 912 during the break because it hasn't got any tape on it anymore.
They can have changed what they want.
Yeah.
Just to draw attention to the fact that the Lant Motorsport Audi has made its splash and dash pit stop at this point. It, in any case, actually that could lose it the position to the number 3 car, Fred Vervisch in the Phoenix car, because if Fred Vervisch can go round on another lap and get to the pit in, then he will be in a position to go past the number 1 Lant car. So possibility there that the Phoenix car is going to be able to overtake the Lant Audi in the battle between these cars, which has been raging throughout the race. These two, 3 and 1, have never been very far apart, but certainly that pit stop for Lant hands the advantage to Phoenix.
The number 4 crew are in the pit lane with the lollipop out, I'm being told, by Well Irish Kev.
Meanwhile, Adam Christodoulou getting very close indeed to his teammate, the sister car at Black Falcon, the number 5 Jelmer Berman car. So the Bilstein machine just up the road. That must mean that Adam Christodoulou has already put a lap on the Aston Martin car 007, and down the hill towards Breitscheid they go again, past 256, which is the Class 5 leader. Tristan Vidas, the Estonian driver, doing a cracking job there to stay in front of what was a very busy group of cars at the start of the race. Adam Christodoulou caught on the wrong side of one of said Cup 5 cars there, couldn't apply the accelerator quite as early as he wanted to, and have had an hour forced. But at least no contact made. Still, can't really judge the mood down at Black Falcon. There's anticipation.
Pensive.
There's yeah, certainly some pensive faces, but do they know that they've got something in hand? Are they realising that they might be able to get to the end of this race without the need for a stop? And have they forced Manthey Racing into a definite splash and dash? Very tricky to read, even with 15 minutes to go, 15.5 minutes left, and so difficult to predict who's going to win this, purely because the race leader, certainly 912, must have to come in for one final stop.
And so does the second place car. I'm pretty convinced of it, Adam Christodoulou at this point, because his pace has not been that much different. So they're both going to be into the pits at this final pit stop. The pit stop itself will be a whisker over a minute when it comes in, a minute from pit in to pit out. So I think it's be a minute and 4 seconds is the minimum pit stop time. And the problem for Christodoulou is that he is not that far behind Makovici, that his pit stop's going to be any deal shorter. So they're going to come in 20 seconds apart and probably go out 20 seconds apart. The similar situation will happen between the Black Falcon car number 5, the Bilstein car, with Maxime Martin in the Aston Martin, and then it's just going to be who can get out of the... I mean, let's assume the car starts, and that nobody drops a wheel or forgets to do the bolts up and all those other things that can go wrong, and then it's just going to be a last lap dash.
Paul's such a sunny little soul, isn't he?
You don't account for anything before it's happened.
No, I agree.
This race in isolation tells me that. Just look at what happened to Manfilter, thinking, well, they had done all the bolts up seemingly on the wheels and still one fell off.
Just looking at the sector times, Johnny, 2:21.9 in sector 3 for our leader, 2:25.2 for second, 2:25.7. So it's around about 21:22. Well, not if you're Yelmer Berman. He's just done an 18.5 in the middle sector. So he's pushing. Now, do we read anything from that? He did a 9.50 last time around. That's, 8-9 seconds quicker than anybody else on the circuit. Does that mean they're particularly worried about fuel? Will he come in? Surely he's going to come in at the end of this lap.
Has to.
He has to. I think the only thing he might be trying to do is to catch up with the Manthey car and frighten it, and frighten Makovici into thinking that it's Christodoulou coming up on his tail.
The plan, clutching at straws a little bit, but you never know. In the tricky visibility, very easy to confuse one Mercedes-Benz from another. Heightened senses to look out for the SAP car, I suppose, from Fred Makovici, but Manthey will be keeping him well in tune with the location of his nearest rival.
I reckon he's coming into the Kleiner carousel now, is Fred Makovici.
Under 13 minutes to go now.
So inevitably, when they come through at the completion of this lap, it will be the start of the final lap. And if anybody doesn't have enough fuel to do the final lap, then they just have to dive in at the end of this lap and get what fuel is left.
22.1 seconds the margin at the start of this lap between the two leaders. It's been eked out even more now by Fred Mako, who was 4 seconds quicker than the Mercedes in sector 3.
If the 912 doesn't stop and the Mercedes number 4 does, then the Mercedes has got no worries, but Fred possibly has. I don't see. I think they all have to stop.
It's absolutely. It is actually now basically capitulation from all. They've settled into their positions, and although they're all trying desperately hard, there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do that's clever. There's no strategic you can play. You've just got to be fast and do the job properly.
Leader is in the pit lane. There is one other card, of course. There's 11 minutes and 24 seconds to go. 11 minutes and 24 seconds before the checkered flag comes out. If Christodoulou goes through and slows down, can he be the first man to the line without this car, the 912 car, catching him? If he does a slow last lap.
Christodoulou's in. So
is he?
No. But it was an interesting theory for a few seconds. I just don't think, even at the reduced pace, they would have been able to eke out an extra lap somehow. So these are timed stops, remember, minimum pit stop times. And Black Falcon will be having their cars very close to one another indeed, the 4 and the 5.
Can't make a mistake on the time here, Johnny.
Can't.
53 seconds should be the time for the 912 car.
He's out.
Be gone.
He's out.
He was 7 seconds over, and the Black Falcon car number 4, Adam Christodoulou, will be out in 4. He's got another 10 seconds to wait.
Third and fourth are in as well, by the way.
And
at a 16 seconds, so 8 seconds lost by the Aston on both of the last 2 laps in its chase for a podium position. Make no mistakes here on the 4, guys, but you can't afford to leave it short here. They've put in 28.5 litres.
And that stop for Christodoulou is comfortably longer than it needed to have been. So, again, I think Black Falcon have accepted the fact that Manthey's beaten them. They'd rather get to this flag securely, safely. I mean, Adam's going to go give it everything he's got on this final lap.
And it is the final lap, Paul, because we're now under or on 9.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And in these conditions, 9.5 minutes for a lap is would be extraordinary.
Oh, Fred left the pit lane with a lap time in hand, but he can easily elongate it to be about 20 seconds longer than necessary and force the checkered flag as he comes out of Tiergarten.
I don't think it matters, because I don't think Christodoulou can reach the line before the checkered flag goes out. So even if the Porsche goes round and doesn't get the checkered flag, all that'll happen is he'll get one more lap, he'll do it, and he'll finish the lap up on the field.
You know, out laps have usually been around about 11 minutes and over 11 minutes. So
well, that's because it includes part of the pit stop.
Yes.
That's
so
from
what we're
pit
going to
in.
see, and he had about, when he came out, he had right on about 10 minutes and 15
It was about
seconds.
10 and a half minutes,
Yeah.
and I'm just looking at Mako's last lap, and it was 10 minutes pretty much on. So he's going to have to lose about 30 seconds here. It's close, though.
Well, he doesn't, because he can go through and do another lap.
He could do another lap.
Because he's got fuel on board now. That's not the worry. So do they now want to win with a lap on the field? That's the question.
Yeah.
And how hard do you tell Mako to push to make that happen? It's a great story. We came in early, we had a puncture, we've won. Is it a better story that we've won and no one else was on the lead lap?
Yeah,
We have
obviously.
dominated.
Yeah, absolutely. And those that witnessed every single bit of the race will know they didn't dominate, but it looks great on a press release, doesn't it? Yeah, I've done that a few times as well. The painting on the asphalt.
BMW Roundel.
Yes.
Which I thought was a car
on the
park.
Hansom back, and the car going wide off it. I keep thinking that Fred's going to hit a car there, but it's just paint.
Olaf Mantai, Dr. Frank Stefan Walliser, the curly-haired, bespectacled head of the Porsche GT programme. The decisive moment of the race, what, about an hour ago now? A bit of bumping and barging at turn 2 at the Yokohama S's, and the Porsche went through into the lead, a lead that Johnny's not relinquished since then. Adam Christodoulou trying to hold on the lead by driving off the track and heading straight to the apex.
Yeah, and they've made contact since this incident as well, because through traffic the Mercedes nerfed the back of the 912 after Adam Christodoulou caught Fred Mako in slower moving saloon cars. But everything that Adam has thrown Fred, he's been able to react, and more specifically the Porsche has been able to react, because it's had the single lap pace and indeed the pace across the stint to just eke this gap out.
Go on, Paul.
Of course, the other thing which the 912 car has had, as well as that puncture and coming through the back door of the pit lane, it's also soaked up a 3-minute and 30-second penalty in the pit lane. So it is, in effect, a very dominant victory for the car, although the outcome was far, far, far from certain earlier on.
I think Christodoulou has slipped behind the battle for third. I'll check that at the next point, the next checkpoint, but I'm pretty certain that he's now got the battle for third. They've unlapped himself with those last stops. As Paul said, the AMG Team Black Falcon number 4 car was much longer than it needed to be.
No, you're absolutely right. The number 4 car's pit stop was actually 1 minute 12, and he could have got away with a 1 minute dead. So an extra 10 seconds whistled away in the pit lane for no good reason other than to put it behind that battle for third place.
Right.
Jelmer Berman now heading towards Callenhard, and Aston Martin probably, well, what's the difference at the start of the lap? 15 seconds, about the same as it is, but as you say, the 4 now doing this likely final lap. Possibly not. You don't think
It
so?
will be for him. It's his final lap.
Yeah, for the number
the only
4,
question is how hard Fred Mako pushes, and the answer is not that hard.
No.
Fred Mako can do another lap in terms of fuel, so that the question for me is whether Porsche want to merely beat the opposition, or on paper at least, as far as the results are concerned, completely annihilate them and wipe the floor with them by being the only car in the lead lap.
2:35 that time for Fred Makovici through sector 3. Compare that to a 2:28 for Jelmer Berman.
Who must be close to unlapping himself, Berman.
Yeah, probably. Check on the tracker in a moment, but 7 seconds the deficit there compared to Fred Makovici and a hard-pushing Jelmer Berman. So Berman is now heading out of Bergwerk. And the race leader, Adam Christodoulou, still trying to find the 912 car.
There it is, just behind him. He is behind him.
912 and, well, the 5 car displayed at the moment on the tracker.
Maybe not.
Just behind.
Yeah, maybe not.
And do you want to get a Black Falcon Mercedes too close there?
No.
You know,
no.
The danger is that the sister car might do something very, very silly indeed. Better to stay ahead of Jelmer Berman, who is well and truly revved up after his stint-long battle with Maxime Martin. Out of the carousel goes Fred Makovici, and he's deliberately losing time through these sectors. 3 minutes and 25 seconds to go before a checkered flag is displayed.
2 minutes and 50 before Fred Mackerel gets to the line. So he's going to have to slow down quite a bit more not to do a lap. I don't think it matters. I don't think he needs to take that risk. What I don't understand is why Christodoulou isn't absolutely hammering along.
They've settled for second, haven't they? And there's not much point in throwing the car off and losing second place. So he's just driving well and truly within himself.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Mako is going to get around and be able to do this extra lap.
I agree.
Christodoulou won't have to do an extra lap because the checkered flag will be out by the time he gets there. So it'll be a proper lap of honour for Manthey here, because he'll be able to tour around on his own, and provided he gets to the flag at the end of it. In fact, even if he doesn't get to the flag at the end of it, he'll be fine, because he's completed the most laps in the time of the race.
The other effect of this as well is I think Berman's going to get an extra lap Jelmer Berman's going to get an extra lap as well, which will put him a lap ahead of the Aston Martin, which I don't think now will get another lap. It's going to be touch and go. It's really going to be touch and go as to whether the Aston gets to the line before the checkered flag comes out. But I think Berman is close enough that if he keeps his pace, he will, and they will then finish on the same lap as the number 4 car.
Yeah. Christodoulou stuck in quite a bit of traffic now at Brunchen, and blue flags frantically being waved by the semi-sheltered marshals, and there is a bit of a roof there, but I'm not sure it prevents the sideways rain that we've had plenty of.
More than a golf clap for the marshals, the recovery operators, track services. Any 24-hour race is hard. Any race on the Nürburgring, harder still. This one, well, weather-wise, we've boiled them, we've frozen them, and we've soaked the marshals this weekend. Thank you, every one of them, and also to everyone here at the Aston Martin Lounge who have helped us out and allowed us to make our 12th broadcast from the ADAC Zurich 24 hours of 2018. How close is the leader, Johnny? Bring him home, Johnny.
It takes just under a minute to do the Dottinger Her, and I saw Fred go through Sector 4 with about 1 minute and 5 on, so there is an option just to rein things back on the Dottinger Her. 35 seconds to go. And some of the other SP9 cars further down the order have been completing this final sector in over a minute. He's got traffic to deal with. I also spotted an injured Audi working its way into Tiergarten, and I just wonder, there's the Audi with a headlight missing and slotting through. Berman goes by.
So Berman's going to get another lap. So he's unlapped himself from the leader and will get another lap. Now, what happens here? I think they're both going to go through.
Nah, he's waiting for the checkered flag. It's Fred Makovici, and how's the timing going to be? He's going to crawl across the line to make sure he gets the race finish here.
Did Berman get through?
And for the first time, Berman got through, but the first time since 2011, it's Porsche that take victory, and the pit wall down at Manthey absolutely erupts. It's just a faint smile on the face of Olaf Manthey, not technically running the team these days, but it's a team that very much still carries his family name, and now the big grin erupts on Olaf's face, and everyone else down at Porsche can start to celebrate.
Christodoulou comes through in second. The margin of victory then at the end, 26 seconds. really don't understand why they weren't pushing hard to make them do the other lap.
I think they realised that they were beaten. There are times when all you're going to do when you're going to push is just you're going to make another mistake, and I think they just realised that second was the best they could hope for. Jelmer Berman then in the number 5 Bilstein car is going to get round and finish on the same number of laps therefore as his sister car and also as the race-winning Manthey Porsche. So we've got three cars. Finishing on the lead lap, and the gap first to second at the end of that race of just 26, albeit slightly artificial, seconds.
And it will be a win in SP9LG and 4th overall for Aston Martin Racing in the final outing for the Vantage in its current form as a works car. Maxime Martin has crossed the line, that's confirmed. And so the story that started with the little GT4 car back in 2006 with Rose continues. The bright yellow car as it was then, hence the Yellow Rose of Texas as it was named. It continues with the bright lime green Aston Martin Racing new British Racing green stripe for the final outing of that model of Vantage. And the next time we're here, we will have the new Vantage GT3, this time next year. I think that's a cracking result from Aston Martin. I do. That's their best result here by a margin.
It was more than they could hope for. It was a superbly executed race. Lots of challenges for them to overcome throughout it. Obviously, with the weather, but everything else. They never had a car that was going to blitz the opposition on pace, as Manthey had. They haven't got the, all due respect to Aston Martin, but they don't have the resources of Black Falcon running the 3 cars effectively, in fact the 2 works cars and then the additional Black Falcon car. So I think finishing behind the might of Manthey and the bulk and the organisation of Black Falcon to finish 4th, yes, 1 lap behind, but superb performance, and I mean many congratulations to all the drivers as well, because they, each of them, every one of the drivers played their part in it.
Joe Bradley, a thought from you at a race that once again has delivered pretty much everything, whether it was weather, excitement. We'll go through the other class winners in a little while, but I mean, just thinking about what happened at the front of the field.
There's not a race like it, is there? There's not a race that epitomises my adage of a soap opera behind every garage door, is there? I mean, it doesn't matter where you look down this 148 car field, there is a story, and there's a story that will many anecdotes to be taken from just one race. This race has always proved to us to never to be over until it's over, and to kind of create the tension this morning, leaving us 90 minutes of racing.
Yes.
I mean, it's as if whoever wrote the script this year clearly had a hard job, because they had a better last year, they had a better the year before, and how better to better those 2 races than to kind of restage everything and take a restart.
You were going to go home.
I was ready to go home, absolutely, and I still would have, because I thought the conditions were deplorable.
Martin, fortune favoured the brave, and the brave there was as much the ADAC and the race director as any of the drivers that were out there. It looked an odd decision to restart the race. It proved to be absolutely the right one.
Temptation would have been really strong to go.